will control the vertical.
Welcome to Anthologic, the TV anthology podcast. I am your host, Mark. Anthologic is a podcast dedicated to exploring the good, the bad, and the odd of horror, science fiction, and the best of mystery suspense anthology shows and series on TV. Join me as we slip through the cracks of reality to approach the extremes of experience, where we can peruse the stories and art of a sinister fairground of strange and wonderful rides. And now we go on to the show that is the focus of this particular episode. Welcome to this episode of Anthologic with your host Mark, and today I've got a special guest on for this episode. It is Anthony Rotolo. Hi Anthony.
Hey Mark, glad to be here with you.
Yeah, it's great to have you on. Now Anthony very frequently comes on one of my other podcasts, which is Kingology, as well as other stuff. We just do stuff together, and we operate in a very similar space. You, for example, Anthony, you've got TV Terror podcast, and the one we're going to be talking about today is probably very significant in TV Terror world, isn't it?
It sure is. It sure is.
Yes.
We're also cohorts on United Nations of Horror. Just a little plug for that show.
Yes, indeed. So today we are talking about Twilight Zone episode 8. Which is Time Enough at Last. A classic, considered a classic, I'd say. Right, so this episode was episode 8. Episode 8 first aired on the 20th of November 1959. Now, just to give it a bigger context, Twilight Zone ran for 5 seasons. This, I think, is considered one of the classics, would you say, Anthony?
Oh, absolutely. This is like the poster child among a few other poster children for the show. Time Enough at Last is iconic.
And Rod Serling himself said this. He named 2 specific episodes as his favourites, and this was one of them. So this really, really sort of batted it out of the park. It's based on a short story called Time Enough at Last by Lynn Venable, which I understand was a fairly, 6 pages. There was barely any dialogue. The characters were not particularly well developed. It was more like the punchline of this particular episode than the whole story. But Rod Serling took it, really liked the idea and expanded it greatly, right? So, and we get Burgess Meredith. What a performance, huh?
Oh, wonderful. Burgess Meredith is just one of the most adaptable actors. I was telling someone recently how I'm struck how right around like the time of Rocky, 1976, you have him doing a character like Mickey, while then doing a character like if you have seen the movie Burnt Offerings, the name eludes me, but totally different persona. And then a movie like Foul Play. He's just kind of a chameleon-like guy, and yet very recognizable, very enjoyable. It's not Burgess Meredith playing Burgess Meredith. Very good actor.
Yeah, it was great in Magic, and obviously it was the Penguin in the Batman TV show. But interestingly, in interviews, he mentions that the thing that is most talked about, not just in TV but in everything, is this particular episode. People always sort of raise this episode, Time Enough at Last, to him. Which is a testament to the power of this episode, both the writing and the performance, I'd say. It's interesting, this one. I really enjoyed it. I thought I'd seen it, but watching it, I hadn't. I'd seen the end, and I remember thinking, it feels a bit cruel, really. This man really hasn't done anything, and this horrible thing happens to him. It feels a bit sadistic. And Rod Serling himself sort of says that sometimes the audience felt he was trying to be ironic, but the audience felt it was a bit sadistic. But there is the contra argument that this man is kind of obsessed with books rather than getting on with real life. So maybe this come up, which I don't agree with, by the way, which I don't agree with at all. But
well, it's fun. It's funny, Serling, as much as he can be accused of being too syrupy and sappy and sentimental, here's a case where he really goes for the throat with a stinger of an ending.
Yeah, we can see him restrained, but he doesn't. There's no messing about here. This is quite big blown, but the performance is very subtle. It's not the acting; it's the concepts that are big in this. So there is stuff going on. He's basically given no peace whatsoever, is he?
No. We should. This is a good opportunity just to give the basic setup. So, we've got this Henry Bemis character who is kind of he's a bookworm. And that's really the ultimate word for him, but very much a persecuted fellow. He's got a very overbearing wife. He's a mousy kind of a personality, and he works as a bank teller. And when he's supposed to be really focused on the customer, he's sneaking glances at David Copperfield or some other book, and always getting in trouble with those that are kind of like the authority figures around him, almost like a child being scolded. But what's interesting here is that the object of their derision is reading. They accuse him of being a reader, like it's a curse word.
Yeah. When he explains to the president that his wife won't let him get on with reading, he says she sounds like a very intelligent woman or something like that.
That's right. That's right.
Yes. And not only is it he wants to read beautifully, he wants to read anything. Yeah, in fact, he loves reading anything, a magazine. But there's a funny bit where the president tells him off because he was reading sort of lapel badges for an election. And he's obviously got terrible eyesight. He's got super thick glasses, and he'd be sort of squinting forward, looking at this lady's chest or lapel, and getting into trouble. And he says, "Oh, I wanted to know how she voted."
Yeah, it's kind of funny. It's a little bit of a racy insinuation. That bit of humor at the time, very funny.
Yeah, so well played by Burgess Meredith. He really plays it like someone, who needs his glasses. His actions are very... Burgess Meredith must have watched people with severe, limited eyesight and got some perspective about that, because he acts it so well, right? Having said that, he's wearing super thick glasses, so he probably had to do some of that stuff anyway to get
exactly.
around.
Yeah, and he's so desperate at times just to read, just as a compulsive reader. He's reading the cereal boxes. His wife is confiscating books as fast as she can discover them.
And not only that, is when we get to his home life, she's quite a terrible human being. She's deliberately found one of his hidden books and crossed lines through every page, book of poetry, which she calls doggerel.
Yes.
And he's saying, why would you do this?
Yeah, why would you be so cruel? Brilliantly played by Jacqueline DeWitt as his wife, Helen. Helen, why would you do this? He has a wonderful book of poetry, but she's defaced every page and crossed out all the prose. Terrible, terrible.
Yeah, and then she rips up the book in front of him as well.
Yeah.
And he's on his knees picking up the piece of paper, and he's just bemused why anyone would do that, And she obviously really doesn't like him.
No.
And doesn't give him any peace. We're going out tonight, so he gets no time at all to do stuff. But then he sneaks off to the vault, and there's an atomic war or something. That was quite effective. They sprung that whole set. The whole set of that safe was sprung, apparently, so it shook. The whole set shook.
It wasn't just a camera shake. It was the set that they were.
It was the whole
doing.
Lot.
Yeah,
and they were using some interesting light filters. After that, they were using a blue light filter to make it a little darker and stuff. So there's an interesting sort of camera work going on. I must say the Blu-ray set I've got, it looked great. And
yeah.
As with all the other episodes, there's some great extras. There was an interview with Burgess Meredith. There was some really nice commentary. Really good set. If you like the Twilight Zone, you should really get the Blu-ray set.
Not to geek out too much with that stuff, but yeah, the Blu-ray. I have to agree. There's something about black and white film where it just is like a revelation in high definition, and you get a more intimate feeling like there's just sort of like a layer that's been stripped away, and you feel a lot closer to the actors. You can see every fine line on their face. This one's another one that's a beauty.
Yeah, and it really shows the acting quality. Not only is Burgess Meredith great, but what's her name? Jacqueline DeWitt, is it?
Jacqueline DeWitt, yes.
DeWitt, she gives a great performance too. In fact, everyone's really good in this. It's a really nice piece. But the bomb goes off, and then we see him in the room. They have to be careful, obviously, because of censorship. They can't show too much, but we have him sort of wandering around the ruins and then getting out into this barren landscape of bombed America. There's wrecked cars, and he doesn't. He makes himself some food. He goes, well, I've got lots of time. I've got food. What more could I want? But immediately he finds a sort of gun shop, and it looks like he's going to kill himself, doesn't it?
Yeah, he's at a moment of just absolute loneliness and despair. They cleverly cue us to what happens just before it happens. He's reading a newspaper in the bank vault that tells us that there's an H-bomb capable of total destruction. And then suddenly, there's the explosion, and now he's wandering in a post-apocalyptic wilderness, urban destruction. And he's at the pit of despair until he kind of has an epiphany at that point.
Yeah, he sees the public library, basically.
That's right.
And he sees a little sign, and he goes up, and his eyes light up. And the next minute, we see him on these steps with big piles of books, and he's going January, February, and then next year, the year after. It's kind of, I've got time enough at last. But then he sees one book on the floor, reaches forward, his glasses fall off and break. So So it's not fair, he says. And I really like that there's a shot, it pulls back and he's, from him, and he's standing there, but there's a broken clock at his feet, suggesting there's the time for you. And it's right, it's not fair. It's kind of a sad ending, but it feels kind of a really punchy story, this.
Yeah, it's an ultimate example of irony. Serling is famous for irony in these Twilight Zone episodes. We see it in, he was a part of Planet of the Apes, and that has an incredibly iconic ending. But here again is irony, another story that has a sting in its tail. And it's really pretty epic because, by the way, beautiful sets. And the set that makes such an impression is these grand stairs to the public library, and the way the camera moves to reveal, stack upon stack of books. And he's kind of rehearsing to himself his inventory, how like this year he's going to go through the works of Shakespeare or, whatever they might be, and going all through the books, and only to break his glasses. Is just a sticking of the knife in and twisting it.
It is indeed. One other thing that I really liked was it's kind of subtle, I think, in terms of how it comes about. We don't really feel sorry for the world here. What's happened to the world? Because everyone that seems we see encounter this poor man seems to be, wanting to get rid of reading. Hates reading, and who wants a world where that would happen, right?
Exactly. This is a story that, in a way, it's a love letter to book lovers, and it's a distorted view of the world, but it's meant to be a love letter to people who, if anyone has ever felt like they are superficial or not serious persons because they have a love for the printed word and for stories, and for people who can get lost in stories and have maybe felt some measure of the persecution that we see this guy get. This is kind of a tale about that. So it works that way.
It's a wonderful story, and I haven't. One of the things I'm doing Anthologic for is I haven't seen that much Twilight Zone. So this is almost every episode is new to me, and this is by far the best one. I really like some of the other episodes, but this one's my favourite, and this one is the one that going to stick in my mind, I think, from this point on. So I really like this one.
Yeah, loved it. Wonderful opening and closing narration from Serling. Serling, it's another example where he brings very poetic kind of a presence where he sets it up and caps it off and, reminds us that we're in the Twilight Zone. And this is the kind of thing that happens in the Twilight Zone.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, Serling's so good at this. I mean, there's a reason we're talking about this show, so many years after. And this is one of those episodes that really cements in the mind as great. So, yeah, I really enjoyed this. So, thanks for coming on, Anthony. Now, Anthologic, you're kind of new to Anthologic, so I want you to just mention about TV Terror, because I think a lot of our Anthologic listeners will be interested. So, please tell us.
Okay, so TV Terror is my podcast. It focuses on mainly classic television. It bills itself as horror and thriller programming from the movie of the week, Golden Age, and beyond. So with that, it certainly gets into, like I said, the movies of the week, but also Twilight Zone is one of our grand subjects. I've had some interviews with experts on it, so we've got some nice stuff over there if you want to check us out. And a wonderful dovetailing with what you're doing here, Mark.
Oh, indeed. I just have to mention you had an interview with Nick Parisi, right? About Rod Serling, his book on Rod Serling, which was fantastic. So anyone who likes the Twilight Zone or Night Gallery or any of the other Serling stuff we do, that's a big recommend, that book.
Yeah, that book is
and listening
great.
to that interview, right?
Yeah, Nick Parisi really put out an important book that rounds out the scholarly shelf on Serling, because he went around to many collections. He pretty much filled in the gaps on the Serling body of work. So now we kind of have an exhaustive look at all of Serling's work, and it's thanks to Nick Parisi. So, yeah, good interview. But it's, for a guy who passed away at about 50 years old, he's a grand subject. So my interview just covers the early years, and I hope to get back to Mr. Parisi for more.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. Yeah, and your website is tvterrorshow, as one word, .com. tvterrorshow.com, right? So thank you. Let's wind it up there. Thanks, Anthony, again, for coming on. And one final question to our listeners. Is anybody out there?
We now return control of your television set to you until next week at this same time, when the control voice will take you to